Okay, folks, let's settle it down. Claim a seat and be happy in it. Good morning. What a lovely group of people we have here today. I'm glad you're here, each and every one. Is there anyone here for the first time? Raise your hand. Oh, welcome, welcome. Can we get a visitor's packet for her? Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. We'll give you a little packet that gives some information about our congregation and our beliefs. Welcome. Okay. Well, Woodland Chapel, as you all know, is a center. It's a center for, I don't know. I like to say it's a center for love. It's a center for joy. It's a center for peace. It's a center for simply being who and what you truly are in your heart of hearts and in your mind and your soul. And you're just welcome to join us in this consciousness this morning as we unfold in many wonderful ways. Okay. I see we have at least one packet. That's good. Ruth? Ruth's hearing aid isn't working today. So she'll get it. She'll get it. Oh, goodness. Well, let's take a couple of minutes and just look at some announcements. You have a program. Next week, our guest speaker, it's me. Our speaker next week is me. That's wonderful. And we're going to be talking on There's No Place Like Home. So that should be an interesting development. Please join us for hospitality after service today. The visioning meeting is scheduled for November the 20th. And so come here and be prepared to stay a little extra. We'll talk about just what we are and how we grow. And on November 5th, we have a craft day, and that craft day is going to be a fun day. We start at about 11:30, and we'll go to about 4 or 4:30, and it's be an informal day of just fun activities, crafts, to share. Bring a craft if you like, or just come and you can, I think, paint rocks. Is that right? You can have rock painting there at least. I've done that one before. That's fun. Never painted a rock. It's good. And I'm pleased to announce that we do have a dinner scheduled for Thanksgiving Day at 2 o'clock. And there are sign-up sheets out there so we know who's coming and how many people to prepare for. The chapel will provide the turkey and the gravy and the potatoes, and then it'll be potluck for the rest. So there's a place to put on what you'd like to bring. So the sign-up sheet is in the library, thanks to Susie and Greg. Now, okay, I would like to do something a little different this morning. Anyone who's wearing a costume, please stand up and tell us what you are. Okay. All right, let's start in the back. Cynthia. Have a happy Halloween. All right.
And I'm the birthday girl.
Oh, okay. Happy birthday. Slavic, how about you?
I'm Slavic, Prince of Unknown Land.
Say that again?
Prince of Unknown Land. Prince of an Unknown Land.
Okay, I'm not hearing.
Prince.
Prince.
Of an
Unknown lands.
Of unknown lands. Okay, Prince of Unknown Lands. All right, wonderful. Kathy, what are you?
Well, I got this T-shirt from the courthouse, but it's my Super Kathy T-shirt.
Aha, Super Kathy. Michelle.
Well, I could either be a crane or eagle. So I'm an eagle crane, and I wasn't eagle crane cat because I didn't want to limit my possibilities.
Okay, Eagle Crane, all right.
Yes.
Catherine Kim.
I was a dinosaur.
What happened to your dinosaur up there?
Too hot.
You're extinct. You should become a cat.
Now I borrowed some cat ears.
Now you're what?
You didn't see the costume?
I did see it, yeah. Okay. Looks like you're the stripped down dinosaur, sort of.
Way too hot.
Okay.
Extinct.
Shannon.
I am the reincarnation of one of my ancient ancestors.
Ooh, a wizard, perhaps?
A sorceress.
A sorceress. Ooh, okay. Welcome, sorceress.
The one who survived Salem.
Oh, very good, very good.
I am Ruth Kubeckia Herta, also known as a black-eyed Susan.
Black-eyed Susan for Susie. Thank you, each one. You guys sit and be seated.
Good witch of the east.
Oh, well, you're what?
I don't have a hat on.
You're the what of the East?
The good witch of the east.
The good witch of the
She
East.
has her
Ruth.
hat.
All right.
Oh, well, yes.
And that's Cheryl.
But I don't know.
For sure. Oh, goodness sakes. You were out there. Tell us what you are, please.
I'm a fairy god plumber.
Fairy God Plumber. Oh, good. It's always good to take advantage of these moments and enjoy them. Oh, wonderful.
What are you, Reverend Mark?
But, oh. This is my costume today. I'm disguised as a minister. Oh, goodness. I think next we did the welcome. That's really good. Let's sing a song. Does anybody want to sing a song? My God is so good to me.
Okay, you're going to want to stand up, I'm sure. I got up this morning singing, God is so good. I got up this morning singing, God is so good. I got up this morning singing, God is so good. My God is so good to me. Feeling good in my soul, feeling good down in my soul. God is so good. Feeling good down in my soul. God is so good. Feeling good down in my soul. God is so good. My God is so good to me. In my time of trouble, or in my time of trouble, singing, God is so good. In my time of trouble, singing, God is so good. In my time of trouble, singing, God is so good. My God is so good to me. In my time of triumph, or in my time of triumph, singing, God is so good. In my time of triumph, singing, God is so good. In my time of triumph, singing, God is so good. My God is so good to me. When my day is over, when my day is over, singing, God is so good. When my day is over, singing, God is so good. When my day is over, singing, God is so good. My God is so good to me. Every day, every way. Every day, every way. God is so good. Every day, every way. God is so good. Yeah, every day, every way. God is so good. My God is so good to me. I got up this morning singing. I got up this morning singing. God is so good. I got up this morning singing. God is so good. I got up this morning singing. God is so good. 3 times. My God is so good. My God is so good. My God is so good to me. Oh, let me hear you sing hallelujah. Oh, yeah.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you. How many of you were here for meditation this morning? Anybody? Quite a few. If you were, you enjoyed a beautiful meditation led by our very own practitioner, Cheryl Ostrander, who's going to pray us in now.
Good morning again. Couldn't resist. Thank you, Blaine. Yes, that's beautiful. So I invite you to turn within and feel the love of Spirit. I turn within not to shut the world out, but to grow closer to that inner voice, to that inner joy, to that inner love that is who I am. I know that this Spirit is acting through me today. Spirit is all joy and laughter and love and so much more that my human mind can't even comprehend. I know that this Spirit abides within each of us, those who've chosen this room for their worship this morning and those who've chosen another space that fits for them, and those who are visiting us through the magic of the internet. All are blessed. All paths to Spirit are blessed. And as I celebrate this oneness, this connection, this community that we are all a part of, this magnificent togetherness, individual but together. As I celebrate these things, I know that this service is unfolding perfectly, in wonderful ways, in beautiful ways, with the energy of this congregation, bolstering it, expanding it, infusing it with all that God needs us to be. I know that words reach our hearts. They come in through our ears, but they reach our hearts, which is where they're meant to reside. And lives are changed. None of us will leave here the same way we came in. With great thanks, I embrace this prayer. I speak this word of gratitude and release this prayer into the law, knowing it is done as spoken, and through grace, so much more. And join me in affirming, and so it is. And we have an affirmation here in your program. And if you would join me in saying, I bless all things in my life as the moments, hours, and days fill my life. I know the infinite reservoir of love and abundant good lights my way, giving me guidance and clarity of vision, and the willingness to receive that good. And so it is.
Our reader this morning will be Michelle G. Mateo. Please come forward, Michelle.
Well, good morning again. Okay, so now you have to do this so I can tell if you can hear me, because sometimes people don't. Okay. Thank you. The key, louder? Okay. The key will turn. The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul, which opens into that primeval cosmic night that was soul long before there was a conscious ego, and will be soul far beyond what a conscious ego could ever reach. Carl Jung. We are cosmic beings temporarily caught, as it were, in a finite net, Undoubtedly, we have come up through endless eons of evolution through the instinctive intelligence of the animal to the self-conscious of the human, and are apparently ready to take the next step, which is a greater consciousness of the cosmos and our unity with the whole. Back of our evolution, there appears to be a cosmic impulse compelling progress, pushing us forward. There also appears subjective memories, emotions, and cravings, and the world of experience, not all of which are altruistic or salutary, but which pull us forward. We are pushed and pulled at the same time, whether it be within or without, drawing us onward. This mind is expanding. And that's from Ernest Holmes' Know Yourself, pages 32 to 33. Pushed forward by consciousness and pulled by current events and our reactions to them, each day feels like it's some of both. This is less a clash of energies than a paradox, that of being in the world but not ultimately of it. Either way, we progress and evolve and liberate ourselves from the finite net by casting our gaze through spiritual practice toward the far horizon of the cosmos. During this space in the wheel of the year, that of Samhain, All Hallows, and Dia de los Muertos, a vague yet oddly familiar call reaches us from beyond the veil of sense perception. In Ernest's final work, The Celestial, or The Voice Celestial, with his brother Fenwick, we find this closing assurance coming from the presence. When self on higher self doth meditate, the key will turn that opens wide the gate. So it is, and so mote it be. The affirmation is, today I name all things good and well and holy. Thank you.
At this point, we'll ask Blaine to do some special music for us.
So I have a couple of songs I'm going to do today from the Church of Garth. That spiritual leader, Garth Brooks. Just the other night, at a hometown football game, my wife and I ran into my old high school flame. And as I introduced them, well, the past came back to me, and I couldn't help but think of the way things used to be. She was the one I wanted for all time, and each night I sat praying God would make her mine. And if he'd only grant me the wish I wished back then, well, of course, I'd never ask for anything again. But sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayer. Remember when you're talking to the one upstairs, even though they may not answer, doesn't mean they don't care. Some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayer. She wasn't quite the angel I remember from my dreams, and I could tell that time had changed me. In her eyes too it seemed. We tried to talk about the old days. There wasn't much we could recall. I guess the good Lord knows what they're doing after all. And as she walked away, well, I looked at my wife, and then and there I thanked the good Lord for the gifts in my life. Sometimes I thank God for unanswered prayer. Remember when you're talking to the one upstairs. Even though they may not answer, doesn't mean they don't care. Some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered. Some of God's greatest gifts are all too often unanswered. Some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayer. Amen.
Thank you very much. That's a beautiful song from Garth Brooks, no less. All right. We're really privileged this morning to have a guest speaker. Has anybody here not heard Jerry Braza before? Not heard him? Just one? Oh, Jerry. Okay. Two. Well, just a little short introduction. Jerry has been a teacher of mental health and mindfulness for many years. He's written 3 books that I'm aware of, Moment by Moment, The Seeds of Love, and Practicing Mindfulness, this last one out in the year 2020. Professor Emeritus at the Western Oregon University with his PhD from the University of Utah. Please join me in welcoming Jerry Braza, an ordained mindfulness teacher in the Dharma tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh, right?
I always say that's hope when you clap early. I bow. Dear Thai is Thich Nhat Hanh, my teacher. And usually in our tradition, we first bow to him as our refuge and source of insight. And I bow to all of you who are here. I'm so taken by the organization that it takes to put on this morning. A meeting with the practice group beforehand, beautiful readings. You didn't really need me because they really said what I might want to say. Yet they are beautifully crafted to meet the needs of you, all of us, including myself. I'd first like to honor, and I didn't have a chance to tell you this, Reverend Moore, that a brother of ours, Pritam Rohila, died yesterday. Dr. Pritam Rohila was a member of the Oneness Coalition that some of us were a member of. We had some meetings here at the Woodland Chapel. Interesting enough, about a month ago, I received a letter. I know he sent it out to a number of people. He said, I'm not sure how much time I have. I knew he was sick. But he said, please forgive me if I said anything that hurt any of you. That's all he said. I wrote him a letter back and said, brother, all you said were beautiful words. Beautiful words that inspired me and inspired hundreds of other people. And so this is a technique we can use, one that I was going to share at the end. Writing letters to people that may have died, that we may have unfinished business with, that may be lurking in the shadow of our consciousness, which will be my topic tonight, the dark night of the soul and the shadow. Yet coming out of the practice session this morning with the ministers and assistants, I heard the word joy. So I'll have to tell you about a group I met with yesterday, once a month, a colleague of mine. We created a series on the mystic. I talked about that here the last time. And one of the techniques that, one of the challenges of mystics, they have a dark night of the soul. And that's what we all have, a shadow. And they also have that connection that you talk about so beautifully here at the Chapel in Love. But there's a technique that we can use, and it's writing letters. So I talked about my wife, Kathleen, who was a thanatologist. And because there were a lot of people who had losses in this group yesterday, 3 or 4 people in the last 2 or 3 years had lost a spouse had died. Other deaths of children and other people. Now, it wasn't sad, it was just an opportunity to share. And I shared the technique is to write, if the person has left us, we can write a letter, as Dr. Rohila did. And just to appreciate those people. And so that's been a practice of Kathleen's. But also, the interesting part, our dog died about 4 months ago. I told Kim about this. And Kim's dog's name is? Sun. Keep on the outlook. I'll tell you why. Kathleen has been writing letters at night to Amelia, our dog. And then she would ask Amelia to write letters back to her. And so, this sounds crazy, but it's really a good Gestalt technique purported by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross when she did her death and dying work. It's not crazy. And the group said yesterday, well, what did Amelia say to Kathleen? And Amelia said, get a dog. So that's so I talked to a couple people about that. Kim included this morning, and Sonny heard that message. And maybe we need a dog. I'm not sure. But I do know that the mystics had this challenge of, in fact, even in the 13th and 14th century, they left their busy city life to go to the desert. That's why they're called the desert mothers and fathers. Interesting. And they became some saints. Francis, Teresa, and others, Clare, and a number of other mystics. And one thing they found in the desert, because their true reason for being was to connect with God, divine, ultimate, whatever you want to call her, him, whatever God. Somebody asked me the other day, what are God's pronouns? That's a good question. What are God's pronouns? Well, we in society, we all see it as a masculine, but really, there's got to be something more than that, right? They, all, he, her, us, them, all, everything, the whole bag. But in their attempt to make that connection, they had dark nights. As was mentioned in Cheryl's, was it Cheryl? We're reading on Jung, Michelle's message. You talked about Carl Jung. Well, John of the Cross was the first person in the 16th century who talked about and wrote a book called The Dark Night of the Soul. Carl Jung framed this the shadow. The shadow. Eckhart Tolle said, a dark night of the soul can be brought on by an external event, natural disaster, a medical diagnosis, death of a loved one. It also can be stimulated by an internal event, such as reaching a milestone birthday. Who am I now? How many of you had questioned that along your life? You left something. You're in that liminal space between being with a person and now you're no longer together. You're in that space between the past, with them, with a career, with others, with other things that left us. Life is impermanent. But you still don't know what it's like on the other shore. And so this is what it's like. Show of hands, how many have experienced that dark night? Yeah, I think it's common. For me, the dark night, and for others, it often occurs at 3 o'clock in the morning. For males especially, have to go to the bathroom and get back to sleep. But if something happened, I can't get back to sleep. I'm having a dark night. I'm having a night that I don't know what to do with. So our shadow comes up during that darkness. And this is a time to really look at it. And I ask myself, why is this shadow and dark night so important? Well, I believe it offers a snapshot of everything that is in our unconscious mind or store consciousness, as Thich Nhat Hanh says. The things that have happened during our whole life that many of us have buried. It's in the cellar. Our mind consciousness is the living room, all the things that we're aware of. And these old memories are activated when we're quiet, when we're in the middle of the night. And that's why I think I love the monastery so much, and why the mystics love to get to the desert, or maybe why you like nature. Because you feel connected to something greater, and at the same time, other things come up because you're not hiding from it. You can't turn on the TV or watch the news or do things to avoid. And so I use these 3 o'clock morning times to write things down as I do write down my dreams. Because I've always been a believer in Carl Jung's work and looking at what our minds, unconscious minds, are telling us. And today, unfortunately, many of us use what is called spiritual bypassing. Do you know that term? Spiritual bypass. A spiritual bypass is to use ideas and practices like we get in any church, here, in sanghas, anywhere. They're great. They're helpful. They're tools. But if we sidestep or don't face unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks, it's a bypass. It may soothe us like a good movie will at night, like a series that we're watching on Netflix or something. But yet it doesn't quite touch it. Bottom line, we need to recognize and act and address our darker or less spiritual emotions, impulses, and intentions, and stop denying them as a part of who we are. And look at our world today. We need to recognize how many leaders have bypassed and are projecting their own emotional stuff on us. I'll talk about how you can know your shadow is operating. One is they're pointing out with 3 fingers pointing back. It's your problem. You're wrong. This is not, you're not doing it right. It's divisive. It's not creating true connection. And it's divisive in the fact that we are us versus them mentality, yet we are all connected. So one practice that I believe in, there's so many quotes that might help us with this. Maybe you've heard The Guest House by Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house, empty its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out. The dark night, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So I love that. I always read that to myself every once in a while. The theme of what I'm talking about, I'm sharing today, is never dismiss anybody, any idea, any things that are coming up in your consciousness. Now, I think maybe we take this a little too seriously. One of my favorite teachers is Jack Kornfield, who understands what it means to be human. He says, if you can sit quietly after difficult news, if in financial downturns you remain perfectly calm, if you can see your neighbor's travels to fantastic places without a twinge of jealousy, if you can happily eat whatever is on your plate, you can fall asleep after a day of running around without a drink or a pill, if you can always find contentment just where you are absolutely a dog. Well, dogs are on my mind. I've been adding things to my talks to affirm the fact that maybe this is important. All beings are important. However, to understand our shadow, there's certain core feelings that I think you will all be able to relate to. And one of these is fear. Mark Twain said, "My life has been filled with terrible catastrophes. You've heard this before, 99% of which never happened." We get caught on the things that never happened. And yet, maybe the original fear, maybe it's equated to original sin. I'm not sure, but original fear. When we were born, everything was new. Sounds, light, breathing on your own, our first feeling. Later we continued. To accumulate fears and push them into the storehouse. So these fears were with us since we were a small baby. And, we didn't know. We just wanted and needed that comfort. But just think of babies that don't get it, don't have it. Fear is fundamental. It's a part. It's a natural feeling that we need to have to protect ourselves. We're here because we've had some fear in our life. I love the practice that we talk about in Buddhism. It's tea with Mara. Maybe you've heard the story. The Buddha was having trouble, according to Ananda, his aide, who said, "I noticed that Mara is around you," when he was giving these talks. And the Buddha said to Ananda, his aide, Don't worry about it, Ananda. Invite Mara for tea." In other words, bring in that struggle, bring it to you, and have an opportunity to talk and share and understand what that fear means to you. Jack Kornfield says, name the demons. Find a way to name those demons. We all have those demons, but we don't want to avoid it. We don't want to look at those demons. We push them away. We keep ourselves busy. Another part of the shadow is anger. It's another natural feeling and emotion we think about. Anger gets a lot of bad press, however, because we haven't seen or experienced healthy anger. We see people get violently angry. We see political acts against different parties. And it's really sad how that anger is coming out. Anger is a true feeling of being vulnerable. But I grew up with a mother saying, "Gerald, don't get angry." I wasn't allowed to get angry. So what did I do when I had that feeling? Did anybody experience that? You know what I mean? Don't angry. What will the neighbors think if you're angry? You're my son. You can't be angry. My dad, when he got angry, he'd throw down a newspaper. That was the worst of my traumas. That wasn't too bad. I had a healthy family. Yet, the other night, I was talking with my wife, we had a difficult conversation, as couples do. And I took these glasses, and I flipped them to the middle of the bed. And she says, "Don't you ever do that again. Don't you ever do that again." I flipped my glasses. In other words, she saw it as a sign of anger. She saw it as a weapon. It could be just a glass. Because if a person has a life of trauma, little things can trigger that, can remind that person of their parents, of other people in their life. So I'm being vulnerable here today because I think this is something we all need to do. So we need to find ways to embrace that anger. I remember I was learning psychology and would learn techniques in the 70s on how to, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross taught this after a loss. I went to one of her retreats and we take a hose and we pound on the ground. We take phone books and try to rip them. And it was anger. And I could never really get into it because I never experienced anger. But the reality is they found later that that was practicing anger. It's not a good technique. But universities were doing it. They were taking students. There was a women's group where I was teaching at the University of Utah. They get old dishes and they have the women come in there when they were angry and they throw the dishes against the wall. Feels good, huh? It does feel good. But the reality is, it is practicing anger, my opinion. And that's what psychologists are now saying. Thich Nhat Hanh so wisely said, when you're angry, embrace it like a mother would hold a child and rock that anger and bring peace to that anger so that it can dissipate. And I found that to be much more sensible as a technique. So there's fear at the core of our shadow. There's anger. And another one, there's two more I'd like to share. Shame. Shame is emotion mostly driven in our shadow because it relates to something so excruciating and uncomfortable, we don't know what to do with it if we've been shamed. Now again, I had a lucky childhood. But let me give you a couple experiences. I went to a Catholic school 12 years. And one of the punishments was if somebody was misbehaving, they'd have to sit by what we called the green door. It was a door where the priest came into the school if we were misbehaving. And so if the priest saw somebody standing by the door, we'd get double punishment, in addition to being shamed in front of the classroom. A great technique. I went into education because of these things. Literally. I said, I don't want any children to be taught that way. I was in another famous technique, the rotten apple row. The rotten apple row is a row of people, one side of the room, the good students next to them, and the rest of the barrel. They wanted the rest of the class to be protected from us because we were rotten. And the height of this was I was locked in a closet during a movie because I was misbehaving for an hour and a half during the movie. Now, luckily I had good family. Most people would have gone under. But I had the resources. If I would have had a family that was mixed up as the nuns were at the time. And I drafted a letter once to send to the Archdiocese of Milwaukee. But the reality is, as I looked deeply, these were young women who were teaching. And they didn't have the experience. They didn't have the whereabouts. And so now I have compassion. They did only what they could do. And so there's forgiveness by looking back at these things. And then there's another one. Our bigness and our beauty. That is generally not considered bad, but if you grew up in a family like I did, where my mother would say, "Who do they think they are? Those relatives of ours. Who do they think they are? I can't believe this." So it became a bad thing to say, "You know, Mom, I did well in life." I could tell her this when she died, before she died at 102. I said, "Mom," I had chances to walk with her and say, "Mom, thank you. You did the best you could. And now I'm okay as a person." And even every once in a while, somebody would ask me about my connection with Thich Nhat Hanh. And so I told a couple stories that were personal. And I don't need to say those right now. But after that, I thought to myself, who do I think I am? I don't need to brag about this. My ego is alive. What's wrong here? One of our Buddhist practices that seems to be most helpful are called the 5 remembrances. And if you can practice these 5 remembrances, you will start to maybe give some awareness to a few of these ideas. And they're recited at Buddhist monasteries on a weekly basis. The first awareness is, I am the nature to grow old. There's no escape. I'm abbreviating. I'm the nature to have ill health. There's no mistake. I'm the nature to die. There's no way to escape death. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. Everybody around us will change. There's no escape. And the 5th one is the only one we have control over, is my actions are my true belongings. How do I respond to these things? What are my actions? Because, at the end of our life, that's all we're going to be remembered for. Not how many houses we had, or where we lived, or what we did. It's going to be, did we make a difference? As I told my brother, Pritam Rohila, we've been together at different conferences, and I said, brother, and I'm suggesting you do this to people before they die, you did a wonderful job. Have no regrets. Thank you for living your life so fully. Now, working with the shadow, I'll end with a few things that maybe give you a sign that your shadow is showing up. How do we know the shadow is knocking at our door? Well, it often happens at 3 o'clock in the morning or whenever you choose to get up. One is projection. I mentioned this earlier. When we attribute something to another that is in us. So if I'm telling you, oh, you're overly angry, you're overly sensitive, well, that's me. But I want to get rid of it because I don't like it. It's a part of my shadow. Reactivity. I think this is a very important piece because I believe our practice is to become equanimous. There's different groups that meet here in the recovery program, and I love all those groups. Sometimes they'll come into our Sangha that meets right upstairs here. And one day I talked to the guy afterwards who was looking for the group, and he says, I'll stay. And then I talked to him, and I said, you ought to have a chapter of Equanimous Anonymous. And that is to keep your equanimity, which is helpful for all of us during these times. So if we don't react to things, that's a good sign. Excessive positivity. Am I able to be my true self? Or am I always nice, nice, nice? My mother taught me to be nice. But I once went to a therapist when I was on a sabbatical, in Palo Alto. And after he listened to my story, and pardon my French, he said, "Jerry, I'm giving you a license to be an asshole." Is that acceptable to say that in church? I don't know. But that was the truth. And I don't think I ever was one. But I always was afraid to share with others what was really going on. I was always afraid I always wanted to be nice. Emotional numbness is another thing. We damp it down and we don't share what's really going on. Another is refusal to say we're sorry. And another is, I think that's it. And so those are some ways that we know the shadow is showing up. And now, in closure, I would say, if there's something that can put this all together, I would say embrace it all. Whatever comes up in your dreams, in your worries, in your fear, in your anger, embrace it. Don't be afraid to get into the mud. And as Thich Nhat Hanh would say, no mud, no lotus. Beautiful flowers coming out of mud. We need mud in our life. And so I know this isn't as positive a message as often shared here. Reverend Moore teases me once in a while, but I'll come back and talk about love if you ever invite me again. And Anne Lamont said, "My mind is a bad neighborhood that I try not to go into alone. If you need help, get help." It's like me going under the crawl space of our house. That scares me more than anything. Full gear, mass, 2 layers of everything, looking for that dead animal. Another is transform so you don't transmit. How wonderful that can be. We don't have to transmit our shadow to others. Our responsibility and how you will be remembered is what you transform, not if you transmit it, your anger, your shame, your fear, your anxiety, your stress. Transform so you find love in God, the ultimate, the divine, or whatever the pronouns are. Find this because this is the practice of the mystics. And I end with, rather than fear, share love. Rather than anger, share gratitude. Share loving moments rather than regrets. Do this with those in your life that you care about, that care about you. It's never too early to tell them because death is right on our shoulder. And as I heard yesterday from a group of people, life is impermanent and there's so many challenges and everyone carries a heavy burden. And the majority of those burdens are around death, loss, and the fear and anxiety that comes up with this. And I love the song, When My Day Is Over, singing, God is, just sing one verse.
God is so good to me.
God is so good to me. I'll add, Buddha is so good to me. All the other teachers are so good to me. The Woodland Chapel is so good to us. May we offer support to each other because that is our only true continuation. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate all of you. And Kim, find a dog.
We'll let Lane take it away here.
Okay, here's another song from the Church of Garth. Oh, I was going to say, I played at this little church that had about 6 people in the congregation, and I did this song last week. And when it got to the chorus, they all sang along, and it was wonderful. So I invite you to do the same. They say a dream is like a river, ever changing as it flows. And the dreamer is just a vessel that follows where it goes, trying to learn from what's behind, never knowing what's in store. Makes each day a constant challenge to stay between the shores. And I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry, like a bird upon the wind. These waters are my sky. I'll never reach my destination if I never try. I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry. Too many times we stand aside, let the water slip away, and we put off until tomorrow, and it soon becomes today. So don't you stand upon the shore, say you're satisfied. Choose to chance the rapids, dare to dance the tide. And I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry, like a bird upon the wind. These waters are my sky. I'll never reach my destination if I never try. I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry. But there's bound to be rough water. I know I'll take some falls, but with the good Lord as my captain, I can make it through them all. I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry, like a bird upon the wind. These waters are my sky. I'll never reach my destination if I never try. I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry. I will sail my vessel till the river runs dry. Till the river runs dry. Till the river runs dry.
I will sail my vessel. Wonderful. Thank you so much. You know, it's time for us to think about sailing our vessel here at Woodland Chapel and keeping our ship afloat, should we say, or our airplane in the air. And we do that by sharing. We share our love, we share our time and talents, we share our costumes today. That was super. And also we share our money. We share the kind of the universal medium of exchange in our society. So I urge you to keep in mind right now what it is you'd like to share. And perhaps if you have a check written out or you've got a certain sum of money, you'd like to put it in your hand, let's offer it up to the continuation of keeping our ship afloat, our sails full, and our journey strong So let us say together in our offering, divine love as me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I circulate, and so it is.
Blessed always, blessed always, for the arms of God surround us. Let our joy be so triumphant that we rest in God and say Amen. Blessed always, blessed always, for the arms of God surround us. Let our joy be so triumphant that we rest in God and say Amen. Let our joy be so triumphant that we rest in God and say Amen.
It is with a joyful and grateful heart that we realize that all that comes to us is a gift. Whether it's from the darker side or shadow, or the brighter side of our awareness of the presence of the infinite goodness of God, or the presence of living in the moment, no matter where it's from, we give it all into the circulation of the law of love, the law of beingness, the law of truth. And so we rejoice and are glad together. As we do this, let us say together, and so it is. We have a prayer of protection. Let's stand and say that. Is that okay? Program. The light of God
surrounds us.
the love of
God enfolds us.
the
Power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.
Let's sing together about peace.
I got up this morning singing, God is so good. I got good. My God is so good. God is so good to me. Okay.